Good afternoon. Welcome back to another 2 p.m. with the Trigger. Great to be with you here today. Streaming live on multiple platforms, not planets. We're not that advanced yet. No. Woo. Wouldn't that be cool, though? No, streaming live on multiple platforms to help you shine on camera and shine on stage to elevate you and your brand authority by learning media savvy skills. So you're seen as a go-to expert. Coming up tonight, we will be having a go-to expert experience. We're going to be doing a live book launch coming up at 6 p.m. tonight, right here, streaming on all these same channels and more. And it's going to be a great interview and a great discussion. So learn more about that. And again, check it out on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. Yeah, a lot of fun places. So today we're going to jump on a question that actually has grown bigger just in the last several hours beyond what I even thought it was going to be. Podcasting and talk show hosting. I host a lot of events. I have been doing this again. If you've been following along for a very long time, I love hosting. I love interviewing. I love great discussions. It's fun to find out about people, their lives, their careers, their insights, and what makes them tick and what makes them unique in their space as an expert and an authority. But before we get into some of the tips I was going to share, I'm going to jump in from a little bit different angle. So on LinkedIn, there's a post by a colleague of mine. Aaron Amvala has a post out there right now. Aaron, thanks for shooting this out there. I think it's a great discussion point. He is asking the question, is Joe Rogan's Experience a podcast or a TV show? He calls it a podcast sometimes, but it's leveraging TV like I do. And I have coached personally on this that audio is podcasting. I'm more of a traditionalist. I will admit that when it comes to media and this world that we live in. I think the audio is a podcast. The TV is the video side. I believe what I'm doing right now is TV. Streaming video content is TV. I'm interested in your thoughts on this, so please drop in the chat. Where do you land on this whole thing of the new emerging, the blending, the blurring of the line between the audio and the video? Because like now with Rock the Stage and our show tomorrow night, we have been doing for 3 years only video. We have not touched the audio podcast side of it. We just launched that in 2023, but we are promoting those as separate. It's the same show, but now we are doing audio podcast version, and we still have the TV version, which we have promoted this as streaming TV. I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your comments as we go deeper into this whole idea of podcasts and TV hosting, and it just give you some tips and insights. The first one on this area of talk show hosts is you have to be willing to take the time to learn your craft. Some people are more natural at this, but the idea of being a talk show host, an interviewer, someone that really owns this stage, and it is a stage. It is an amazing, amazing stage that we get to leverage every time. Last night I was watching some old video interviews with the late night king of all time, Johnny Carson. Again, if you want to debate that, put that in the chat. But he is the king. And Johnny was talking about being a great host is something that he has taken very seriously during his reign on late night. He always studied who he was going to have, but he did not talk to them before going on stage. He may know them in other areas, but he had his team take care of him the day of. And his event, he went in not meeting with them beforehand. He wanted the unknown to be there. He wanted there to be a surprise even for himself in the conversation. He didn't want the pre-haul conversation to splash over into what was going to go on live on camera. And I coach that very same way. When we get on our pre-calls, when we get on 15 minutes beforehand is a standard green room time when you're on one of my shows. We get on, we make sure the microphones are good, the lightings are good, make sure everything technical is working. I'll go through the run of show with here's what we got planned up and here's how we're going to run things. Any questions on that? But I do not enter into pre-discussion of the topic. I do not ask pre-questions. I want to know what stories they're going to tell me. In fact, I've interrupted people that have started in that. And I've said, no, save it for the live. I don't want backstage conversation to ruin the spontaneity of the moment. Just don't tell me. And Johnny was talking about the same thing. That's part of being a good host is you want to be wrapped up into it as well, not just your listeners. So if you're doing interview style stuff, if you're getting on podcasts or on streaming TV, guard yourself and be curious. That's one of the big trademarks of everything that I coach and understand. You've got to be curious because you are representing the audience. You are like an audience member who gets a chance to have a microphone, have this platform, and you get to be the chance to ask the questions that everyone in the audience wishes they could ask. So stay curious, ask the questions. One of the other ways, and like I've been doing over the last several weeks again, study other performers, hosts that are in the space. As we open up talking about Joe Rogan, hey, go study what Joe Rogan does. Now, do not copy Joe Rogan, but study what he does, how he does it. What's the craft? What's the methodology of his interview? If you're an audio person and you're more into the audio side of podcasting, go listen to podcasts, authoritative speakers and leaders, and listen to how they're making their shows pop. What's the magic? What's the sparkle? How do they set up and really do their questions? But also, more importantly, what is their relationship with their guests and with their listeners? Because as you do any TV show or podcast, you have two relationships going at the same time. You have one that is your guest. You want to be centered, focus on that relationship. You want to make sure you are engaged and listening, the body language, everything is focused on them. While at the same time, again, you're representing the audience. We want to make sure you maintain interaction, acknowledgement, recognize your audience. If the chat, like we're doing here on these days now with Restream and other platforms, if the chat box is of value, either share it on screen or bring it up and mention it and talk about it and mention the people by name, either first name, last name, whatever information. Usually first name's good enough because it also makes it real personal, but it also doesn't give away too much information. Some people are kind of touchy on that. But you want to have those two personalities or those two relationships shining bright at the same time. As a host, you have to juggle that. That's why it's really important to have a producer. The producer can push on the button, do some other things, but you've got to maintain the relationship of the guest and with your audience to keep everyone happy and everyone engaged. Now, that's going to go to the next thing. And this is one of the biggest ones that is a challenge for a lot of people that are launching podcasts, that are doing it more of a hobby base than a professional base. I come out of the professional broadcasting. I treat this pretty darn professional. I love what I get to do, and I love how I get to help others shine and amplify because of what I know. But you need to study yourself. You need to watch tape on yourself or listen to the audio that you've done for your audio podcast, and you need to critique, analyze, review yourself. One of the things about one of the videos I saw last night about Johnny Carson was he watches current and old material. When he was doing this, he had years of material. He would watch his own evolution. He would see what he had done then, what he had done now, what he was doing now, and he would keep evaluating what's the best way to come alive on his particular stage for NBC. Take a lesson. Learn to watch yourself. Critique yourself on a regular basis. Make sure you're staying cutting edge. Make sure you're staying in your zone of where you want to be. And that's one of my next points is you need to pick your lane as a talk show host. This is a powerful platform. What we get to do as podcasters, as streaming TV hosts, as media people, and this was beat into my brain way back in college, and as I began to work with the broadcasters, as I got into sports play-by-play and was traveling, this was beat into my head very, very strong. Pick your lane for what you're going to do on camera and microphone, and do not deviate from it. Part of it is building your brand, building who you are on this stage. Part of it is you are also selecting an audience that you are going to go with. So I'm all about media. Now, I have other loves, other hobbies, but I do this about media and elevating you and your brand through the power of media, whether podcasts, interviews, a lot of different talents, even your relationship with your microphone. That's a whole nother conversation. But it's about where your lane is. I have chosen not to go deep into politics on my shows. All right. You're not going to hear a big political debate. Now, I may interview someone that's been in the media realm that leverages and talks about politics, but me, myself, this is not a stage for me to get into politics. It's me to get into a discussion about media to help you. What are you going to be talking about as a talk show host? What is your main focus of your show? Now, I know a lot of shows are very eclectic. They go anywhere the wind blows, any guests they can get, and you don't know what you're going to get. It's like turning the radio dial. You don't know if you're getting country, western, rock and roll, punk, jazz. You don't know what you're going to get. Some people like those freewheeling shows. I like to know on any given day, I'm going to land here with this expert, with this person that talks on this topic with amazing people. Mine is the media. What is yours? And figure out what some of your taboos are. I was recently on an interview show and someone asked me, "We don't hear you swear too often on your stuff, Trigger." That's very intentional. Being a good talk show host is figuring out how you're going to present yourself and what your communication standards are. I have had guests on where backstage, it's pretty spicy language, we'll say, okay? I do have to ask them to bring that back down. I said, hey, I'm kind of going for the PG audience. I'm kind of going for a family but mature adult audience. Please don't over salt and pepper your language too much. That's something that I do protect. Now, that doesn't mean you won't hear strong, affirmative language, but you won't hear some of the words that you'll hear on other shows. That's a host decision that you need to make when you're running your shows. And have this, pre-think this out. Think about what you are going to be, what you're going to stand for, what you're going to represent. Because as I coach across the board, you are the brand authority. You are the messenger. Everything hangs on how you show up in your space. So you do need to study others. You do need to study yourself. You do need to figure out who you are and what you are. And as we wrap up, I want to go back to the beginning here today. As a host, somewhere along the line, I think Joe Rogan Experience has decided they want to market themselves as a both and. They're an audio podcast with a TV, but they're a TV podcast first, a TV show first, and now is leveraging the replay and the reproduction of an audio podcast. If you watch Dr. Phil, his TV show is his TV show, but he does have a podcast about other things he speaks on. So he has drawn that line separately between the TV side and his audio side. There's a lot of ways to do this. So think about what you are, who you want to communicate. And as always, if you have any questions, you can always contact me, rich@richbontrager.net. I would love to hear your thoughts on this topic today about podcasting, hosting, and go to visit rockthestagemedia.com. Learn about our services, our coaching, our special events. Like coming up tonight, we do have that book launch party. It's a book release party, and Bill DeBoer has a book about vehicle fleet management. It's a very unique niche area, but also he's talking about profit margin losses. How do you grow and scale a company? How do you protect the assets you have? How do you help others learn how to do that with their companies? It's actually a very fascinating discussion tonight, and we're going to go live at 6 p.m. Eastern time to have that. You do not want to miss it. And then coming up tomorrow night, we are going to be talking about employee retention and their company culture. And some of this, yes, does play into the media side because we're all media companies now. We're all trying to leverage things. As you go that direction more and more, how does that play into the culture of your company? And employee retention is a big topic anyways. Right now, trying to get people to come back to work is really tough. Keeping them is even harder. And tomorrow night, we're going to have a great conversation coming up on how to rock the stage. And we'll be live again at 7 p.m. Eastern time, streaming on many of these platforms. That's going to do it for today. I'm the Trigger, Rich Bontrager. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget, follow us along on Facebook, Instagram, and go to our YouTube channel. Check out the services and the content you have there. And check out that new audio version of Rock the Stage as well. Yes, we have a podcast. and we have a TV, and we want you to enjoy both. See you tomorrow, 2 p.m. live, right here.